In this video, I want to explain why I started my own CPA firm in 2024, some of the actionable steps that I took to get there, and some of the lessons that I learned so far. So let's get right into it. First, you got to make the decision. For background, my name is Mike. I'm a licensed CPA in the state of Pennsylvania, and I have about 7 years experience working for CPA firms of sizes ranging from, your big four to regional to more local. After I graduated college, I worked for a big four firm in Philadelphia, working in their business tax services group. I knew pretty early on that I wanted to open my own CPA firm, but in order to do that, I had to get experience working for a smaller firm that worked on smaller clients, because running your own firm, those are the types of clients that you're going to be getting exposed to. You're not going to be working on the big publicly traded company, and that experience can get pretty siloed. So I got some experience working for a local firm out in Pennsylvania, and that was really good to get exposure to small businesses, more individual returns. And it really helped me develop those skills and get that experience, seeing how a small firm ran, to then carry over into starting my own firm. And then I also worked for a Midwest regional firm out in Chicago for a couple of years, where I had a lot of exposure to real estate clients and, that middle market level of business. Okay, so story time. This is the pivotal moment, I would say, where I knew that I wanted to be my own boss and start my own CPA firm. So I was working for a firm that shall not be named. I'll give you a hint, there's 4 of them. And it was my first busy season. And if you haven't worked in Big Four tax before, you're usually working on a lot of publicly traded clients, a lot of consolidated returns if you're working with C Corps. So there's a lot of moving pieces going on at any moment. And leading up to that deadline, everyone's running on fumes. Everyone is just tired, exhausted, working 70, 80 hours a week. The tax law had just changed. It was the first year. So everyone was just scrambling to figure out, what the heck was going on. And, I was working on the eve of 10/15, if you will, 10/14. I was working on a return that, had a lot of meat to it. And I remember working all day in one of those glass-walled meeting rooms. And there's 3 or 4 of us from my team in there at any given point during the day. I was working all day on this pretty complicated return. I get it finished by about 6 p.m. And then we're working on other stuff. So I'm working, 7 o'clock rolls, 8 o'clock rolls. We get to midnight. I get an email from someone in our SALT, our state and local tax group, the person that was reviewing the work that I was doing. And I remember getting a meeting invite from him at midnight for 3 a.m. that day to review the work that I had sent over at 6 p.m. So I spent the rest of the night working on other things, cleaning up my backlog for that day, because this was really what had taken priority and really had taken over my total focus for the last week. And I went to that meeting at 3 a.m. with a list of, review comments. So I got all these review comments, and I was like, man, there's got to be a better way to do this. So I decided there, I was like, whatever happens with this, my goal is now to start my own firm, start my own business, do things differently, because this is just not sustainable, really. So, I worked through the rest of the night, pulled an all-nighter. I think that week I had 109 hours logged, which, is crazy to think about, that you work that much. And, as a salaried individual, that hourly rate is ridiculous for, what I would say the high level service that we're providing. So I think a light switch flipped on for me, because I realized that, especially being salaried, right? I'm working all these hours, and my reward is just, a pat on the back and more work. So, there's something to be said about the experience that you get for it, sure. But to look, to my side and compare to other people that maybe, weren't keeping up the slack, and you're doing work to make up for what they weren't able to do. And it just was not a good collaborative culture, in my opinion. And that was just my experience. There's teams that are plenty better. There's definitely firms that are doing it right. But I think what I'm explaining is not an uncommon story. So I wanted to position myself more as a provider of good service, rather than someone that is just serving and just trying to, bend over backwards for everyone around them. On the other side too, I realized there was a lot of opportunity, right? With rising technology, we have AI tools coming out left and right every day. You hear all the time, if you're in tune with the accounting industry, about the decline of CPAs, right? So there's less people going into this line of work, and as a result, the supply is dropping, and everyone needs their return done. And I thought there was an opportunity to be an expert in an area that affects everyone, while at the same time, less and less people are becoming qualified to provide the service.
Now, the question that everyone wants answered, right, is what did you do? What did you actually do to get to the point where you could start your own firm? And there are a couple things that I did that I think really helped me out earlier on, that really set a good foundation for being able to go out on my own. First, I started really early, like when I got my CPA early. There's a lot of people online that want to sell you the get rich quick scheme, which there's no money needed up front, there's no experience needed, there's no real know-how that you can just kind of start and get up and running pretty quick, but that's so far from the truth. This business, when you're working with people's financials, when you're working with people's returns, this is confidential information. People need to trust you, and people need to have confidence that you can speak to and know what you're talking about, and that takes a lot of time. So I started doing tax returns and bookkeeping work on the side for friends and family for a couple $100s here and there, while I was still getting the experience at my day job. But don't tell my old firm that, because they're not gonna like that too much. So I thought that really helped, plant the seeds with referrals, which is how you're gonna get most of your clients if you're doing a good job, especially starting out. So, I would start as early as possible, start small, start with simple, projects that you can handle. So the second thing I did, which is really common with solo practitioners, is that I had a contract set up with a local firm to have, some kind of part-time work to pay the bills while I was, filling the capacity and building up the book of business in my own firm. I know that there's people that work with Big Four firms. There's a lot of seasonal hiring that is done. So a lot of people when they decide to make that jump, they, are still working a little bit hybrid or on a part-time basis, working in a contract type role. And then third, I made the jump. I had the actual plan to make the jump and how I was going to sustain myself over the next few months, because the money isn't going to come rolling in unless you leave with a pretty good book of business already. So I had about 3 months savings from my full-time job. Your risk appetite might be different if you have people at home that depend on you. It's very different for someone like me that at the time had no wife, no kids, no mortgage, right? I'm renting an apartment. So it was easier, and I was able to take a little bit more of a risk at that time, but I completely understand that everyone's, results may vary. So you want to come up with the right number that's really comfortable for you and your situation. Then I also had my part-time work on the horizon. So I knew that, if I started off not getting the type of traction that I was looking for and building up the client list, I'd still have part-time work to fall on. The other thing I did was I invested in the right technology, and I'll make a separate video on my tech stack and why I chose what I chose. But one recommendation that I have is to start with pay per file. So when you buy tax software, you can either buy an unlimited amount for an amount of money, or you can pay a certain amount per return that you file. And I think that that's really helpful for people starting out who might not know how many clients they're actually going to end up with at the end of the year. And the other thing you want to do is get your liability insurance. You don't want to be on the hook for a mistake. You're going to make mistakes. People that have been doing this for 20 years have made mistakes. So just keep yourself covered and be careful of what you take on. You don't want to take on too complex of a project that you might not be ready for, especially if you don't have a networking group around you to ask questions. And then the other thing I wanted to do was I wanted to strategically pick when would be the best time for me to actually launch officially. So I chose for April because I figured that this was right after the first deadline of April 15th for most individuals and corporate taxpayers. So those types of clients that had already been filed, maybe they had a bad experience with their prior CPA, or maybe they were just shopping, they're gonna be looking for a new CPA at that point. And then also gave me time during the summer to build up my own processes, get my tech stack together, and get everything pretty much dialed in for that upcoming busy season. And then also September, right? Like that's the extended deadline. September, October is the extended deadlines for tax returns. So if you're getting to a late scramble at that point, it could be a good opportunity, and it was for me, to scoop up a couple of clients to help put out some fires. Not necessarily the ideal type of project you want to take on, but you can really get someone's trust pretty quickly if you help them solve a problem. And the other thing it really did was it gave me time to build like a social media presence, do stuff like this, like make YouTube videos, because I think that there's a real opportunity for the new age, I guess if you want to call it, of CPA firm owners, where you get a lot of organic marketing, you get a lot of organic growth, you get a lot of free marketing. So lessons I learned so far. And the one thing that you want to keep in mind, right, is that I am still in my first year, so I by no means am claiming to be an expert or a seasoned CPA firm owner. I'm just someone that just started this journey, and I thought that by sharing and being more transparent about my own journey, it would help with your own. So I'll say that the one thing that I learned pretty early is the importance of good processes and good software. If you have a client that comes to you and they are, maybe you hit it off, you have super impressive experience that fits with the type of service that they're looking for. If you don't have your processes set up, you might look really unprofessional and you might lose the client there and you might sour the relationship. So the other thing is you have to do everything. You have to do the marketing, you have to do the work, you have to do the, buying the software, all the admin, getting the software implemented, creating your process, refining your processes. Just everything falls on you, and you really learn a lot about yourself in terms of just consistency, persistence. You really develop some soft skills that I think really complement well to succeeding in your business, but then also, being a better person outside of the business. And if you're watching this, I hope that this video gave you a good under the hood view of my own journey, and also whether it motivates you or at least gives you an idea of what actions need to be taken to start to pursue your goals, because that's really what this is about. I hope that you got some value from this. So let me know in the comments if you're thinking about starting your own CPA firm, or what kind of challenges or questions that you might have. And also subscribe if you want to come with me on this journey. All right, thanks.